Welcome to episode 8 of the podcast Ghosts, Demons, and Murder. Oh my. My name is Hayden Crook, and I will be your host for today's episode on supposedly cursed films. So, my main source for this episode is List 25. I looked, and there were a lot of different websites that had kind of like the same movies, same films, and as someone who likes movies, films, I was like, a lot of people have heard these stories about these certain movies. So I picked List 25, the website, because they had some movies and some stories I hadn't heard of, which I thought would be interesting. So that's why I picked this as my main source. But there's a lot of different websites out there with similar stories and such about movies. All right. I don't remember how many movies I picked, but let's see. So the first one is a personal favorite of mine, Rebel Without a Cause. It says everyone expected James Dean to be a massive star. Sadly, before Rebel Without a Cause was even released, he died in a car crash in 1955. He would be the first of three actors to star in Rebel Without a Cause to die too soon. Sal Mineo went on to do some other roles, but his career fell to the wayside. Just as he was making a potential comeback, he was stabbed to death while on his way home from a rehearsal. While Natalie Wood lived longer than her other co-stars, she died during the shoot of the movie Brainstorm. And then I researched a little bit more into this. There are theories that James Dean's car, the brakes were cut, that kind of stuff. I'm not too sure what to think about it, but I looked into Natalie Wood's death a little bit more via biography. It says in November 1981, Wood took a trip with her husband Wagner and Brainstorm co-star Walken to California's Catalina Island on their boat Splendor. On the night of November 29th, the three actors had been drinking. Wagner reportedly broke a bottle during a fit of anger over Wood's relationship with Walken. He thought the pair seemed too close. After that incident, Wood and Wagner allegedly argued. Later that evening, Wagner was unable to find Wood. Her body was discovered the following morning, floating in the water off Catalina Island near a dinghy from the Splendor. Her death was ruled an accidental drowning. It was theorized that Wood fell in the water after attempting to secure the dinghy to prevent it from banging into the boat. Some objected to his explanation as Wood had a lifelong fear of the water. And then my own side note, I think she was murdered. I've been a skeptic about the accidental drowning ruling for years. I watched Rebel Without a Cause, let's see, sometime in high school. So like we're talking 2013, between 2013 2015 era. And I was really into it. I need to go back and watch it. I loved it the first time I watched it, but I definitely think she was murdered. I didn't know all these extra little details about her husband being jealous and drinking and that's it just sounds like a recipe for a disaster. And I don't know why they ruled her death an accidental drowning when it flat out said she was scared of the water and that there was an argument between her and her husband. I don't know. That's not up to me to decide, but that's just my opinion. I definitely think she was murdered, and it's definitely interesting that pretty much the three main stars of that movie were like all met untimely deaths. All right. Number two, Rosemary's Baby, another good movie. Directed by Roman Polanski, Rosemary's Baby saw tremendous success, but it was after the movie's release when everything went wrong. B-movie horror producer William Castle originally wanted to direct Rosemary's Baby, but instead became a producer. Soon after the movie, he received a torrent of hate mail. Then his health quickly deteriorated. He suffered severe kidney stone pain for most of his life afterward. The film's composer died shortly after the release due to a blood clot, the very same thing that killed Rosemary's Friend in the movie. Finally, and most stomach churning, Roman Polanski's wife and friends were brutally murdered by the Manson gang. So it's speculated Rosemary's Baby was um, a cursed film set, and I mean, it was a good movie. I liked it. Definitely, definitely some interesting circumstances around that movie during the time. You know, just like The Exorcist shocked audiences back then, I feel like Rosemary's Baby definitely was ahead of its time back then, and it definitely, like it said, hate mail. I'm sure there were a lot of people that were upset and pissed off and triggered by the topic and the theme of Rosemary's Baby, but I like it. I think it's a good movie. Oh, scrolled down too far, my bad. Okay, number three, The Dark Knight. Oh, my computer's being stupid. Okay. The Dark Knight trilogy has a scary amount of tragedy surrounding it. A stuntman working in China on the set of The Dark Knight unfortunately died when the truck he was filming on crashed. In 2008, Morgan Freeman, who played Lucius Fox in the movie, was badly injured in a car accident. And then Heath Ledger, who played the infamous villain the Joker, died from a drug overdose. Years later, on premiere night for The Dark Knight Rises, James Holmes walked into a theater and started shooting, killing 12 people. Fun fact, The Dark Knight Rises, the last one in the trilogy, that was my first YouTube review. That was my first midnight movie, actually. And it was just crazy to me. I remember the next morning waking up and reading about all the killings in Colorado and just all that stuff, and it was just horrible. And then they just kept happening to different random movies. I remember just special screenings, and I don't know the theater. I'm from a small town, and they pretty much stopped doing special showings for movies after the shootings like continued for years, which I get, but you know, it was just I liked that feeling of like going to like a special screen time of a movie, kind of getting to see it early before everybody else, waiting in line with people and that kind of stuff. And that's just very nostalgic for me. But reading about that kind of took me back to that. It's unfortunate that all that happened, but that trilogy, that series is on the list because of what happened. Let's see, The Wizard of Oz. I mean, a lot of people have heard the stories about this one. It says The Wizard of Oz has racked up quite a few myths and legends over its lifetime, and while some are totally false, like the Munchkin who hanged himself that you can see in the movie, there are others which are very true. First, the production itself was a disaster. A rotating door of directors came and went on set. The silver makeup of the Tin Man left the actor Bobby Ebsen in the hospital due to lung complications. Plus, a pyrotechnics accident burned the Wicked Witch of the West actress, Margaret Hamilton, putting her in the hospital. After the movie, the curse continued. Frank Morgan, who played Oz, was in a horrible car accident, and both Clara Blandick, Annie M., and Judy Garland, Dorothy, killed themselves years later. And then I did some more research into um, the death of the actress who played Annie M. And this is from Turner Classic Movies. It says in 1950, Blandick made her last appearance in Love That Brute in Key to the City. She retired in ill health and spent a dozen unhappy years coping with pain and failing eyesight, leaving behind a somewhat melodramatic suicide note. And I don't like that Turner Classic Movies use that phrase and worded it like that when dealing with like mental health and stuff, but I mean, it's whatever. If that's what they want to word, if that's how they want to phrase it, they can go ahead. But so she wrote a suicide note and suffocated herself on April 15th, 1962. The note read, I am now about to make the great adventure. I cannot endure this agonizing pain any longer. It is all over my body. Neither can I face the impending blindness. I pray the Lord my soul to take. Amen. All right. And then the Irish Examiner, um, there was some more stuff about Judy Garland, Oz, and just so the film set was just crazy. It sounds like I'm gonna read that right now. The diminutive Munchkins experienced no such calamities, but their off-screen debauchery was soon Hollywood folklore. Between takes, they drank and brawled. It is suggested they supplemented their earnings. Toto the dog was on a better pay scale. And they supplemented their earnings by pimping themselves out to the crew. They were drunks. They got smashed every night, Judy Garland recalled. The police used to scoop them up in butterfly nets. Bert Lahr, who played the easily frightened lion, said, assistants were ordered to watch the midgets. They brandished knives and conceived passions for normal-sized cast members. It wasn't until a 1949 reissue that The Wizard of Oz turned a profit. By then, the curse of the movie was in motion. Garland descended further into drug-mediated unhappiness. She died aged 47 from a barbiturate overdose in 1969, following several suicide attempts. Frank Morgan, who played the wizard, was in a serious car accident months after the film's release. His driver was killed, and his wife was injured. 11 years later, he was cast as Buffalo Bill in Annie Get Your Gun. The day before filming was to begin, the actor died in his sleep from a heart attack. So, Wizard of Oz, that was an interesting one. I'd heard about, like, if you go back and look at like the original release, like you could see there was like a Munchkin had hung himself, and I'd heard about that, but I didn't realize like the actress who played Annie M had killed herself and like had such horrible like health conditions, and I didn't know all this stuff happened to the cast members, which is really interesting. So I wanted to include that because I figure, I mean, most people have heard some of the basics of that, but I just wanted to share more of it. All right, The Omen. I should have put the year in. I didn't. This is the original one, the very first original one. Omen, not the remakes, not the spin-offs, none of that. It says the bizarre events surrounding the Omen feel too eerie to brush off as a coincidence. Let's start with Gregory Peck. Shortly after he accepted the role of the adoptive father of a devil child, his real-life son shot himself in the head with no explanation. Regardless, Peck continued on, flying out to shoot the film. On the flyover, his plane was struck by lightning. The plane's engine caught fire and almost crashed. Both screenwriter David Seltzer and producer Mace Newfield, on separate occasions, both had their planes struck by lightning, too. This was just the tip of the iceberg. Car accidents, dog attacks, and several other close dances with death continued throughout the whole production. And then I found more information on like specifics of those incidences on Ripley's Believe It or Not website. Believe it or not. It says, as Ripley's has previously debunked, lightning most certainly can strike the same place twice. It's darn unlikely, though, which is why those unfortunate souls who have been struck multiple times are sometimes considered jinxed. The same is true of the Omen, the creation of which was dogged by lightning strikes. Not only was the plane Peck was traveling to London. Oh, sorry. Not only was the plane Peck was traveling to London in struck in September of that year, but so was that of Mace Newfield, the movie's executive producer, during a flight to Los Angeles soon after. To top things off, Harvey Bernhard, the producer, was on location in Rome when he was almost hit by a bolt of lightning himself. Bernhard said the devil was at work and he didn't want that film made. And yet the supposed curse is just getting started. The Omen also features iconic scenes in which the major players are attacked by vicious animals. Baboons threaten Damien and Catherine in one scene, wild dogs chase Robert through a cemetery in another. Incredibly, there were unlikely incidents linked to both of these scenes. The baboon handler died the very next day following the shoot with these animals, and the pack of dogs turned so vicious that they nearly caused the stuntman terrible injury and could not be called off by their own handlers. What had gotten into them? The same thing that got to the baboon handlers, some say. The curse of the Omen. Another tragic death associated with the movie set was that of Liz Moore. Liz Moore. John Richardson, the Omen's special effects expert, was driving through the Netherlands with Moore when they were involved in a terrible car accident. Richardson escaped, largely unscathed, but Moore's head was completely severed when a tire smashed into their vehicle. A terrible, grisly accident, but fans of the movie will understand the significance of this. It's reminiscent of a scene in The Omen in which Keith Jennings, investigating Damien's supernatural origins, is decapitated by a sheet of glass that comes loose from a vehicle on a construction site. So that's crazy. Like just all that stuff. Like based off what I've read so far on this, I would say The Omen and The Wizard of Oz had the most accidents, injuries, and just overall like random crazy stuff happen on set. That's just awful. I couldn't imagine all that. Let's see. Next one is The Innkeepers, which is another good movie. Check it out. The Innkeepers is a movie about the Yankee Peddler Inn and how two employees try to expose its haunted past. What most people don't realize is the Yankee Peddler Inn is a real location in Connecticut and is supposedly haunted in real life. The director T.I. West reported bizarre happenings during shooting, including doors closing and TVs turning off and on their own, lights burning out all the time, and the crew having vivid dreams every night. Even stranger, he picked the honeymoon suite as the haunted room in the story because he could easily do a dolly shot. He found out later that it is considered the most haunted room in real life. Then I found more information on IndieWire. It was an interview with T.I. West. They said, "Can you elaborate on those haunted happenings you witnessed?" And T.I. West said, "Well, I'm a skeptic, so I don't really buy it. But I've definitely seen doors close by themselves. I've seen a TV turn off and on by itself. Lights would always burn out in my room. Everyone on crew has very vivid dreams every night, which is really strange. The one story that is most intriguing to me in the film, The Most Haunted Room, is the honeymoon suite. That's where the ghost stuff started at the hotel. The only reason I picked the room that I picked to shoot in was because it was big enough to do a dolly shot. No more thought went into it other than pure technical reasons. So when we're finishing the movie, I find out that the most haunted room in real life is the room I picked to be the most haunted room in the movie. It could be a coincidence. It's weird that it happened that way. Definitely check The Innkeepers out. That's a good movie. T.I. West is a good director. He did Pearl, X, House of the Devil. Good movies. All right. Number seven is Psycho. The Hitchcock classic Psycho is about a woman staying at a rural hotel being watched by the innkeeper. While in the infamous shower scene, the woman played by Janet Leigh is slashed to death. On set, one of her stand-ins was Myra Davis, a working actress. Years later, Myra Davis was raped and murdered by a handyman who also turned out to be a huge Hitchcock fan. Then I went on the Alfred Hitchcock wiki page. Not sure how reliable it is. It seemed pretty all right to me. And there was apparently a mix-up, a weird situation regarding the murder. So I'm gonna explain that real quick. It says the filming of the shower scene in Psycho required numerous set changes in order to film each camera angle. Davis, along with Marley Renfro, acted as a stand-in for Janet Leigh so that the on-set lighting levels could be checked before Leigh was called onto the set. In 1988, Davis was murdered, and subsequent media reports inaccurately reported her role in Psycho, which led some to speculate that Davis was in fact Renfro. Author Robert Graysmith, who had a lifelong fascination with Renfro, investigated and subsequently wrote a book, The Girl in Alfred Hitchcock's Shower, about Renfro's role in Psycho and the confusion over Davis's death. So that was just a side bit I thought was interesting. I wanted to include. All right. Last one, number eight, is The Possession. I haven't seen this movie since back in the day. It came out when I was like junior high, high school. I was a sucker for any like any cheap scare, cheap thrill, whatever. So I liked it. I have not watched it since then. I think 2012, 2011 it came out. I don't remember. I know I reviewed it for my YouTube channel, but I don't remember much about it. So the possession movie is based on a real box called the Dybbuk box that's supposedly possessed. Apparently bizarre things happened on set, and even skeptic Jeffrey Dean Morgan admitted some eerie stuff went down while filming, like light bulbs exploding and props catching fire. When asked if they wanted to bring the real box on set, Morgan refused, and many of the cast members had a mantra: don't mock the box. So I found more information. It was an actual interview on NBC Bay Area with Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and they were interviewing him about the movie, and the weird stuff that occurred. And this is what I found. They asked Jeffrey Dean Morgan about the bizarre stuff that happened during the movie. He said, this happened 3 or 4 times that I'm aware of. I've been on movies for a long time now, and I've never seen a 5K light explode in the middle of key scenes. And this happened 3 or 4 times. In a closed studio, without doors open or fans nearby, suddenly a gust of wind would come from nowhere. The last thing I'll leave you with, and let you all freak out, all of our props, the Dybbuk box included, were put into storage in Vancouver so we could go back if we had to and do reshoots. Yeah, we'd had everything there. A week after we wrapped filming, the storage unit burned to the ground and it was investigated. It wasn't arson, it wasn't an electrical fire. It started from within. That's all I'm gonna say. Interesting. So yeah, I mean, I know people have heard like The Omen was cursed, Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, Wizard of Oz, that kind of stuff. But I wanted to include some of those other ones like Rebel Without a Cause, Psycho, The Possession, The Innkeepers, just some different stuff. I wanted to mix it up, tell some different stories that maybe didn't get enough attention or people didn't really know about. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Ghosts, Demons, and Murder Oh My. If you have Shudder, you can check out a documentary series called Cursed Films, which discusses a few films I mentioned today as well as some others. There are currently 2 seasons. Stay tuned for more episodes and be sure to let me know what topics you would like to hear via email at haydencrook8@gmail.com. And Happy New Year, everybody.